My wife and daughter abandoned me when I had terminal cancer. Years later they came back for the inheritance, but I had a surprise for them. The taste of copper filled my mouth as I collapsed onto the cold bathroom floor. Bright red blood spattered the white porcelain sink. My blood. Too much blood. I had just enough strength to reach for my phone before the room began to spin. As darkness crept in from the edges of my vision, I managed to dial 911. Sir, can you tell me what's happening? The dispatcher's voice sounded distant, underwater, bleeding. I mumbled, can't stop, bathroom floor. I gave my address in broken fragments before the phone slipped from my fingers. The last thing I heard was the dispatcher promising help was on the way. Then nothing. Death, I thought, should feel more significant than this, collapsing alone on a bathroom floor. On an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was wrong about dying that day. But I wasn't wrong about being alone. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Sharma's office, my wife Jana beside me, both of us waiting for the test results. The bleeding episode had landed me in the emergency room, where doctors had stabilized me and run a battery of tests. Now we were here for answers. Dr. Sharma had kind eyes behind her tortoiseshell glasses. That's what I focused on as she entered the room, her eyes. But when she sat down and placed a manila folder on her desk, those kind eyes told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke a word. I'm sorry, Robert, she said, her voice steady but gentle. The biopsy confirmed what we suspected. It's pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Beside me, Jana made a small sound, a gasp or a sob. I couldn't tell which. My own reaction surprised me. Calm. A strange, detached calm, as if this news were happening to someone else. How long? I asked, the question hanging in the antiseptic air of the small office. Dr. Sharma didn't flinch. I appreciated that about her. 6 months, maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. I wish I had better news. 6 months. I tried to imagine Christmas, my birthday in February. Would I see either? The calendar in my mind suddenly had an end date, a final page. What are our options? I asked, noticing that Jana hadn't spoken yet. Dr. Sharma leaned forward, hands clasped on her desk. We can pursue aggressive chemotherapy, which might extend your life by a few months but won't cure the cancer. There are also some clinical trials, though I want to be clear that those are experimental and may not help at all. Side effects. My questions were mechanical now. Practical. Significant. Fatigue, nausea, hair loss, increased susceptibility to infection. With pancreatic cancer at this stage, the treatments are difficult. I nodded, processing. And if I choose to do nothing? Janet's head snapped toward me. Robert, you can't be serious. Dr. Sharma remained professional. Without treatment, maybe 3 to 4 months, the end would likely be uncomfortable. I would strongly recommend at least palliative care to manage symptoms. At 53, I'd built a comfortable life. My construction company had done well over the years, not enough to make me wealthy, but enough to provide a good life for my family in our modest suburban home. My daughter Melissa had just started college, and Jana and I had been planning a second honeymoon once the nest was truly empty. Now, those plans were ash. I'll give you both a moment, Dr. Sharma said, standing. When you're ready, my nurse will provide information about treatment options, support groups, and resources for families facing terminal illness. When the door closed behind her, Jana finally spoke. This can't be happening, she whispered, staring straight ahead. There must be a mistake. 3 different doctors have looked at the scans, Jana. It's not a mistake. Her hands twisted in her lap. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She never did when she was cooking, and she'd been making dinner when I collapsed. Such a small detail to notice now. What are you thinking? I asked, reaching for her hand. She pulled away slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough that I felt it. We need a second opinion, she said, from a specialist, not just some local doctor. Dr. Sharma is a specialist, I said gently, an oncologist with 20 years of experience. Then a third opinion. Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, somewhere like that. I nodded, letting her have this. Hope was a lifeline. Even false hope. We can look into it. The drive home was silent. Jana white-knuckled the steering wheel, her gaze fixed on the road. I stared out the window, watching suburban life scroll by, people walking dogs, children riding bikes, a man mowing his lawn. Normal life. Life that would continue long after I was gone. When we got home that evening, Jana went straight to the kitchen. I heard her opening and closing cabinets, the clatter of pots and pans, the rhythmic sound of a knife against a cutting board. Cooking was her therapy, her way of processing difficult emotions. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her work. Her movements were precise, controlled. As she chopped vegetables for what looked like her famous chicken soup, the meal she always made. When someone was sick, she looked up, her knife pausing mid-slice when she finally noticed me. "What are we going to do?" she asked, already reaching for her wine glass. I took a deep breath and told her everything I'd been thinking during the silent car ride. That I would try the chemotherapy, even knowing it wouldn't save me. That I wanted to get our affairs in order. That I needed to tell Melissa in person, not over the phone. As I spoke, I watched something change in Jeanette's eyes, a subtle hardening, a distancing. Instead of coming to hold me, she remained on the other side of the kitchen island, the marble countertop a gulf between us. "I need to call Melissa," I said finally. "She should come home this weekend so we can tell her together." "Let me do it," Jana replied quickly. "You should rest. As if sleep could fix stage for pancreatic cancer. I'd rather tell her myself." I insisted. Jeanette's knife resumed its rhythmic chopping. "You're not thinking clearly right now, Robert. You're in shock. Let me handle Melissa. I know how to talk to her." There was something in her tone that bothered me, but I was too exhausted to argue. The day's events had drained me completely. I nodded and turned toward the stairs. "Dinner in 30 minutes, Jana called after me. I lay on our bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my mind around the sentence I'd been given. 6 months. What does one do with 6 months of life? Bucket lists seemed so cliché. World travel would be impossible once treatment began. What I wanted most was simplicity, quiet evenings with my wife, weekends with my daughter, time to say proper goodbyes to friends and employees who had become like family. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Kate. "Did you get the test results?" I hadn't told her about the diagnosis yet. It felt too heavy for a text message, but I couldn't bring myself to call her right now. "Not good news. Talk tomorrow?" Her reply was immediate. "I'm coming over. No need. Processing with Jana. Call you in the morning." I put my phone down and closed my eyes, just for a moment. When I opened them again, the room was dark. I'd slept for nearly 3 hours. Downstairs, I could hear voices. Jana on the phone. I moved quietly to the top of the stairs to listen. "Just don't know if I can do this, Beth," she was saying. My stomach tightened. Beth was her sister, the one person Jana confided in completely. "They're saying 6 months, maybe 8 with chemo. You should have seen him today, so calm. So matter of fact, like we're discussing a business transaction, not his life." A pause as Beth responded. "No, I haven't told him about the Aspen property yet. There hasn't been, with everything happening. Yes, I know I need to, soon." The Aspen property. My confusion was momentary. Then I remembered Jana had inherited a small cabin in Aspen from her parents. We'd visited a few times, but she'd always talked about selling it. Apparently, she hadn't. I know, Jana continued. "The market's perfect right now. The realtor says we could get almost double what Mom and Dad paid for it. But how do I bring that up now? Hey honey, I know you're dying, but I'm thinking of selling my cabin." Another pause. "You're right. I'll figure it out. I don't know how to do this, Beth. How to watch him die. How to be what he needs me to be." I retreated silently, back to our bedroom, not wanting to hear more. Jeanette's words echoed in my mind. "I don't know how to watch him die." The statement held an honesty that was both brutal and understandable. No one taught you how to watch someone you love die slowly. There was no guidebook for this. When Jana came upstairs an hour later, I pretended to be asleep. I heard her in the bathroom, the familiar sounds of her nighttime routine. But instead of feeling the mattress dip with her weight, I heard her footsteps move down the hall. The guest room door opened and closed. That was the first night we slept apart. The next 3 weeks were a blur of appointments, paperwork, and painful conversations. My primary care physician referred me to an oncologist who specialized in pancreatic cancer. I had more scans, more blood work, more people telling me how sorry they were while avoiding eye contact. I started chemotherapy even though Dr. Sharma had been clear that it would only extend my life, not save it. I wanted whatever time I could get. The first treatment wasn't as bad as I'd expected. The side effects took a day to hit me. Then they hit like a freight train. Vomiting. Weakness so profound I couldn't lift my head from the pillow. Pain that medication barely touched. Jana called in sick to her job at the local community college where she taught English literature. She brought me water, helped me to the bathroom, emptied my vomit basin. Her actions were efficient, practical, but there was a distance to them, a clinical quality that felt more like nursing than loving. You don't have to do this, I told her. On the third day, when I was finally able to sit up without the room spinning, we can hire someone. Don't be ridiculous, she said, plumping my pillows with perhaps more force than necessary. You're my husband. The statement felt like an obligation, not a declaration of love. It hung between us, awkward and heavy. As my body weakened from the chemo, something else happened, something I never expected. The distance I'd sensed in Jana grew. She continued sleeping in the guest room, now openly claiming that my night sweats and restlessness kept her awake. Fair enough, but there were other changes too. She started scheduling girls' trips on weekends when I had no treatments. You'll just be sleeping anyway, she reasoned. Beth thinks it would be good for me to get away sometimes. For my mental health, I couldn't argue with that. Caregiver burnout was real, and we were only at the beginning of this journey. If Jana needed breaks to sustain herself for the long haul, who was I to deny her? Then there was Melissa, my beautiful, bright daughter who had always been Daddy's little girl. The child who had once fake cried when I left for 2-day business trips. The teenager who still curled up next to me during movie nights, even when her friends were over. Now, suddenly, she couldn't make it home from college even though she was only 2 hours away at State University. Finals are coming up, Dad, she'd say on our increasingly brief phone calls. I'll try to visit next month. The first time she said this, I believed her. By the third time, I recognized the pattern. Something had changed in my daughter too. I told myself they were just processing the news in their own way. That Jana was preparing herself for widowhood. That Melissa was focusing on school to distract herself from losing her father. I made excuses for them in my mind, even as the pain of their emotional absence cut deeper than the physical pain of my disease. Kate, my sister, became my rock during this time. Although she lived in ROA and had her own family to teenagers and a demanding job as a nurse, she came to every chemo appointment Jana missed. She brought meals, arranged for a cleaning service, and most importantly, she talked to me like I was still me, not a dying man, not a patient. Just her brother Robert, who happened to be going through a rough time. Jeanette's still not back from Phoenix, Kate asked one Sunday evening, loading my dishwasher while I sat at the kitchen table. Too tired to help but too lonely to retreat to my bedroom. She extended her trip, I said. Beth asked her to stay through the weekend. Kate's movements stilled for a moment. That's the third weekend this month. I shrugged, trying to appear more nonchalant than I felt. She needs the breaks. This isn't easy for her. Kate turned to face me, her expression carefully neutral. And Melissa? Still busy with school. Midterms now, I said, the excuse sounding hollow even to my own ears. She's maintaining her scholarship. Can't risk her GPA dropping. Kate sat down across from me, taking my hands in hers. Her skin was warm against my perpetually cold fingers, another lovely side effect of the chemo. Rob, she said gently, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I nodded, already dreading whatever was coming. When was the last time Melissa actually came home? The question hung in the air between us. I couldn't meet my sister's eyes. 6 weeks, I admitted finally, just after the diagnosis. She stayed for the weekend, then went back to school. And your phone calls? How often does she call you? She's busy, Kate. Colleges, how often, Rob? I sighed. Once a week, sometimes less. Usually she calls when Jana reminds her to. Kate's grip on my hands tightened. And how much time do you actually talk? A few minutes, 5, maybe 10 at most. Does she ask about your treatments? How you're feeling?" I pulled my hands away, suddenly angry. Not at Kate, but at the situation. At the questions forcing me to confront what I'd been trying to ignore. "What's your point, Kate?" "That my wife and daughter are pulling away. That they're finding it difficult to watch me die." "Is that such a shock? Not everyone's a nurse. Not everyone can handle sickness and death like you can." Kate didn't rise to my anger. She just watched me with those steady eyes, our mother's eyes. "My point," she said softly, "is that you deserve better, and that I'm worried about you, not just your physical health, but your heart." "My heart's fine," I said bitterly. "It's my pancreas that's the problem." Kate didn't smile at my poor attempt at humor. "I'm serious. Rob, I don't like what I'm seeing with Jana and Melissa. It's one thing to need emotional space. It's another to essentially abandon someone when they need you most. They haven't abandoned me," I protested, even as a voice inside me whispered that perhaps they had. "They're just coping in their own way, by leaving you alone for days at a time, by hardly calling. That's not coping, Rob. That's running away." I had no response to that, because deep down, I knew she was right. The next week brought another round of chemo, more debilitating side effects, and a growing sense of isolation. Jana returned from Phoenix, but something was different. She seemed preoccupied, distant. Even when she was physically present, she'd check her phone constantly, step out to take calls, and spend hours on her laptop with the screen angled away from me. Then came the day I found her in our home office. I'd been napping after a particularly rough morning of nausea, and had woken feeling marginally better. I wanted to ask Jana if she'd mind driving me to the park. I had a sudden, intense desire to sit in the sunshine, to feel normal for an hour. I found her poring over our financial statements, insurance policies, and the deed to the house. Papers were spread across the desk, sticky notes marking certain pages. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear me approach. Planning ahead, I asked from the doorway. Supporting myself with my cane, she jumped, quickly shuffling the papers as if trying to hide them. "Someone has to." There was a defensiveness in her tone that struck me as odd. I moved closer, curious about what she'd been looking at so intently. "My life insurance policy," I asked, spotting the familiar letterhead. "And the mortgage documents, retirement accounts." "Everything," she said, now making no attempt to hide. "The papers, we need to be practical, Robert. I need to know what I'm facing when, afterward." The coldness of her statement hit me like a physical blow. Yes, these were practical matters that would need addressing, but there was something in her approach, secretive, almost furtive, that felt wrong. "We could look at all this together," I suggested. "I've been thinking about updating my will anyway." A flicker of something alarm crossed her face. "Your will? Why?" "Everything goes to me and Melissa anyway, doesn't it?" "Of course," I said, studying her reaction. "But there might be specific bequests I want to make. To Kate, to some long-time employees. Small things, she repeated, seeming to relax slightly. "That makes sense. But let's not worry about that right now. You should focus on your treatments, on staying strong." I nodded, too tired to press the issue. "I was wondering if you'd mind driving me to the park, just for a little while. It's such a nice day." Jana glanced at her watch, then at the papers on the desk. "Actually, I have a conference call with Beth in 20 minutes. Something about the Aspen property. Can we do the park tomorrow?" "Sure," I said, trying to mask my disappointment. "Tomorrow." As I turned to leave, I noticed a legal pad on the edge of the desk with Jeanette's handwriting. I couldn't read it from where I stood, but I saw dollar signs, percentages, and what looked like a timeline. Planning for widowhood indeed. That night, Jana announced she was going back to Phoenix the next day. "Beth needs help with some paperwork for the cabin sale," she explained over a dinner I could barely eat. "It should only be a couple of days this time. I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday." I reminded her, the one to discuss the next phase of treatment. Jana speared a piece of chicken with her fork. "Can't Kate take you, or reschedule?" "Kate's working a double shift, and Dr. Sharma is booked solid for the next 3 weeks." I tried to keep the hurt from my voice. "It's an important appointment, Jana," she sighed, putting down her fork. "I know it is. But this sale is time sensitive. If we want to get the best price for the cabin, I interrupted. I thought the cabin was your inheritance, your separate property. A flash of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed her face. It is, but the proceeds will benefit both of us. Help with medical bills, whatever we need. I nodded slowly, processing this. How much are they offering? Just under $1 million, she said, suddenly very interested in her salad. The market in Aspen is crazy right now. $1 million. For a cabin Jana had once described as a glorified shed with plumbing issues. A cabin she'd inherited 7 years ago and had visited perhaps 3 times since. That's quite a windfall, I managed. It's just money, she said dismissively. What matters is your health. My health. My terminal stage for pancreatic cancer. We both knew no amount of money would change that diagnosis. Will Melissa be coming home while you're gone? I asked, changing the subject. Jeanette's gaze didn't quite meet mine. I don't think so. She mentioned a big project due next week, but I'm sure she'll call. Later that night, I lay awake in our bed that Jana hadn't shared in weeks and tried to make sense of the growing unease I felt. Something wasn't right. The cabin sale, the financial documents, Jeanette's increasing absences, Melissa's distance, individually, each could be explained away. Collectively, they formed a pattern I didn't want to acknowledge. I reached for my phone and pulled up Melissa's contact. It was nearly midnight, but college students were notorious night owls. She might be awake. Dad, she answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. Is everything okay? Is it, Mom? The immediate concern for Jana, not for me, was telling. Everything's fine, sweetheart, I said. I'm sorry to call so late. I miss you. I was hoping maybe you could come home this weekend. Your mom's going to Phoenix again, and I could use the company. A pause, too long of a pause. I really can't this weekend, Dad, she said finally. I have this massive project due for my marketing class, and then there's a game on Saturday that I promised friends I'd go to. The weekend after, then. I pressed, hating the desperation in my voice but unable to contain it. It's been almost 2 months, Mel. Another pause. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. Okay, I should go early class tomorrow. Melissa, wait, I said quickly, before she could hang up. Is everything okay? Between us, I mean, you seem distant lately. Her sigh was audible through the phone. Dad, you're dying, she said, her bluntness startling me. Nothing is okay about that. I know it's hard, I began. But she cut me off. You don't know, she said, her voice suddenly hard. You don't know what it's like to be me right now. To try to focus on school, on my future, knowing that my father won't be there for any of it. To have friends complaining about their parents, being annoying when I'd give anything for more time. Tears sprang to my eyes. This was the first real emotion I'd heard from her since the diagnosis. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I whispered. You're right. I don't know what that's like. I have to go, she said, her voice thick now too. I'll try to call this weekend, okay? I agreed. I love you, Mel. Love you too, she replied, and hung up. I stared at the darkened screen of my phone, replaying the conversation. There had been genuine emotion there, pain, grief, but something else too, something I couldn't quite name. A remoteness, a holding back. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind cycling through the same troubling thoughts. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting, seeing shadows where there were none. Jana and Melissa were simply processing their grief in their own ways. The distance I felt was a projection of my own fears of dying alone. But 2 days later, I came home from chemo, a session I'd attended alone, because Jana was in Phoenix, and Kate had a family emergency to find a half-empty closet and a note on the bed. I can't do this. Robert, I can't watch you die. I've gone to stay with my sister in Phoenix. I've already spoken to a lawyer about our assets. Melissa agrees with me this is for the best. Please don't call. I read the note 3 times. My hands trembling not from the cancer, but from rage and heartbreak. 28 years of marriage, and she couldn't even say goodbye to my face. Couldn't even wait until I was home from a chemotherapy session to leave me. I called Melissa immediately, my fingers fumbling with the phone. Dad, she answered, sounding wary. I was just about to call you. Your mother left me, I said without preamble, my voice hollow. Left a note saying you agreed with her decision. Is that true? A pause, that damnable pause that told me everything. Dad, try to understand, she said, her voice clinical, detached. Mom can't handle this, and I need to support her right now. And who supports me? I asked, my voice breaking. I'm the one who's dying, Melissa. The doctors and nurses, she replied after a pause. That's what they're for. The callousness of her response left me speechless. This cold, distant person couldn't be my daughter, the little girl who'd once kissed my scraped knee when I fell, saying she was fixing it like Daddy fixes my OEs. So that's it. I finally managed. Both of you just abandon me when I need you most. We're not abandoning you, she said, but the defensiveness in her tone betrayed her. We're just taking care of ourselves too. Mom needs me right now. And I don't. Dad, please don't make this harder. The doctors said your condition will only get worse. Mom can't bear to watch that happen. Neither can I. We still love you. But love, I interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping me. This isn't love, Melissa. This is desertion. I have to go, she said, her voice small now. Mom's calling me. Please understand. This is better for everyone. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, our bed, clutching the phone and the note that had ended my marriage. A lifetime of memories flashed through my mind. Jana and I on our wedding day. Her face radiant with joy. Melissa's birth. The first time I held her tiny body in my arms. Family vacations. Christmas mornings. Ordinary Tuesday dinners. A life built together. Now shattered by a diagnosis and a choice. Abandonment. There was no other word for it. My wife and daughter had decided I wasn't worth staying for. That my suffering was too inconvenient, too disruptive to their lives, that I was, essentially, already dead to them. The pain of this realization eclipsed the physical pain of my disease. I curled onto my side, still clutching the note, and wept harsh, racking sobs that tore through my weakened body. I wept until there were no tears left, until exhaustion claimed me. When I woke hours later, darkness had fallen. The house was silent, empty in a way it had never been before. I dragged myself to the bathroom, avoiding my reflection in the mirror. I didn't need to see what I already knew, that I was a ghost, a shell of the man I had been. I took my evening medications, following the precise schedule Dr. Sharma had outlined. Part of me wondered why I bothered. Why fight to extend a life that had already been deemed worthless by the people I loved most? What was the point of fighting cancer when abandonment had already broken me? But as I stood there, pills in hand, another emotion began to rise within me. Not grief now, but anger, a slow burning, righteous fury that straightened my spine and steadied my hand. They had left me, fine, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of collapsing. I wouldn't die broken and alone just because they had decided I was too difficult to love in my illness. I swallowed the pills, then made my way downstairs to the kitchen. I needed to eat something to keep up my strength, not for Jana or Melissa, but for myself, and for Kate, who had stood by me when my own wife and daughter wouldn't. As I heated a can of soup, the height of my culinary abilities, even before cancer had weakened me, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, Michael, who had handled my business affairs for years. I need to see you, I told him, tomorrow if possible. I need to change my will. If he was surprised by the urgency in my voice, he didn't show it. I can fit you in at 10. He said, is everything all right, Robert? No, I answered honestly, but it will be. The second call was to Kate. Jana left, I said when she answered. Took half her clothes and went to Phoenix. She's not coming back. That bitch, Kate breathed, the uncharacteristic profanity a measure of her shock and anger. And Melissa agrees with her mother, says they can't watch me die. Kate's silence spoke volumes. Then, I'm coming over. Now, no need, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. I'm okay for tonight, but I could use a ride to Michael's office tomorrow at 10. I'm changing my will. I'll be there, she promised. But Rob, I know what you're going to say. I interrupted gently, that I shouldn't make major decisions when I'm emotional. But this isn't emotional, Kate. This is the clearest my head has been in weeks. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table with my soup, making mental lists, things I needed to do, arrangements to make, a future to plan, however brief that future might be. That night, sitting alone in my empty house, I made two decisions. First, I would fight like hell to live as long as possible, even if just out of spite. And second, 4 years had passed since my terminal diagnosis, 4 years that I was never supposed to have. Dr. Sharma called it a medical miracle. After 6 months of standard treatment showed no improvement, she'd suggested an experimental immunotherapy trial as a last-ditch effort. I had nothing to lose, so I agreed. Against all odds, my body responded. The tumors began to shrink. After 2 years of treatment, the cancer was in remission. I was one of the lucky 0.1%, the miracle patient. During those 4 years, I heard nothing from Jana or Melissa. I sent them both emails about my miraculous response to treatment, but received no replies. I moved out of our family home, too many memories, and into a small apartment closer. To my business, my sister Kate became my rock, moving in with me during the worst of my treatment and helping me rebuild my life afterward. My construction company, which I'd expected to close or sell, instead thrived under my renewed attention. A major highway project brought in substantial profits, and some savvy investments Kate had suggested doubled my net worth. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was worth more financially now than when Jana had calculated what she'd inherit upon my death. It was a Tuesday morning when my lawyer called. Robert, Janet's attorney, reached out. She's filing for divorce and seeking her share of the marital assets. I laughed, actually laughed. After 4 years of complete silence, after abandoning me on my deathbed, apparently she's received information about your financial situation and your recovery. She claims she left due to emotional distress and is entitled to half of everything, including the business growth since your separation. 2 days later, as if choreographed, Melissa called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice in 4 years. Dad, her voice was tentative, sweet, just as I remembered it. I heard about your recovery. That's amazing, is it? I replied, my voice neutral. I emailed you both when I started responding to treatment 3.5 years ago. I'm sorry, she said, and I could hear the practiced contrition. I was young and scared. I couldn't handle watching you die, and yet, here I am, not dead. A pause. I've been thinking about coming to visit you. I graduated last year, did you know? I'm working at a marketing firm in Boston now. Congratulations. I offered nothing more. Dad, she continued, her voice taking on a familiar wheedling tone. I remembered from when she wanted a new car in high school. I know things have been difficult, but we're still family. Mom told me about the divorce filing. I think you two should talk directly, work things out. For all of us. And there it was. Not I miss you, Dad, or I want to rebuild our relationship, but work things out regarding the money they thought I had. I'll think about it, I said. The meeting was arranged at my lawyer's office the following week. Jana arrived first, dressed impeccably as always, but with new lines around her eyes and mouth. Melissa came separately, looking so much like her mother it nearly took my breath away. My lawyer, Thomas, greeted them cordially and invited everyone to sit at the conference table. I entered last, using a cane not because I needed it anymore, but because I wanted them to see what they'd missed. Robert, Jana began. You're looking well, cancer-free for 2 years now, I replied. No thanks to my support system. Jana had the decency to look away. Melissa studied her manicure. Before we discussed Janet's divorce filing, Thomas interjected smoothly. Robert wanted to address some matters directly. I nodded and opened the folder in front of me. Jana, Melissa, when you both abandoned me 4 years ago, I made some changes. First, I transferred ownership of my construction company to a trust. I pushed papers across the table. The beneficiary of that trust is St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which will receive all company assets upon my actual death whenever that may be. Janet's face paled. Melissa's eyes widened. Second, I sold our house, the house you left me in, Jana, and donated the proceeds to the Pancreatic Cancer Research Foundation. The donation was made in both your names, actually. I thought you'd appreciate the tax write-off. You can't do that, Jana stammered. That was marital property. I can, and I did, I replied. You abandoned the property and me. It's all documented. My lawyer made sure everything was legal. What about your other assets? Melissa asked. Her voice small. I smiled. My remaining assets have been placed in an irrevocable trust with my sister Kate as trustee. Upon my death, the funds will establish a support foundation for cancer patients whose families abandon them. During treatment, it happens more often than you'd think. The silence in the room was deafening. So you see, I continued, there is no inheritance to fight over, no assets to divide. The divorce should be quite simple. Jana, you get exactly what you took when you left, your personal belongings, and the money you had in your separate account. This is cruel, Jana whispered. Cruel, I leaned forward. Cruel is leaving your husband alone to die. Cruel is a daughter who can't be bothered to visit her father because she has finals. Cruel is waiting until you think there's money to be had before making contact again. I stood up, no longer needing to lean on my cane. I didn't ask for cancer, but it taught me something valuable. It showed me who truly cared about me and who only cared about what I could provide. Consider this your inheritance, the truth. As I walked out of the conference room, leaving my lawyer to handle the details, I felt lighter than I had in years. The cancer hadn't killed me, and now, neither would the bitterness. Outside, the spring sun warmed my face. I checked my watch. I had a lunch date with Kate and her kids in 30 minutes. Plenty of time. I was halfway to my car when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Dad, wait. I turned to see Melissa running after me, her heels clacking against the pavement. Her mascara was smudged, her composed facade cracked. Is there nothing left? She asked, her voice small. Nothing at all. I studied my daughter's face, the face I'd once loved more than anything in the world. I saw Jana in her features, but I also saw myself. And something else, something desperate and broken. Why did you really come back, Melissa? I asked. She looked away, then back at me, her shoulders slumping. Mom's broke. She blew through her savings on bad investments. I've got student loans I can't pay. We thought. She trailed off. You thought I'd be your safety net. She nodded, eyes downcast. Did you ever even think about me? During these 4 years? Yes, she whispered. I did. At first I was just following Mom's lead. But then I was ashamed, too ashamed to call. And the longer it went on, I sighed deeply. Meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Her eyes widened with hope. You mean? I mean we'll talk. That's all I'm promising. As she walked away, I called Kate to confirm our lunch plans. Then I made another call to Dr. Sharma. It's back, isn't it? She asked without preamble when she heard my voice. Yes, I confirmed. The scans from last week confirmed it. The cancer's returned. More aggressive this time. 6 months. She said softly. Maybe less. I'm so sorry, Robert. Don't be, I replied. I've already had for years I wasn't supposed to have. What I hadn't told Jana and Melissa in the lawyer's office was the whole truth. Yes, I had donated much of my money. Yes, I had set up the trusts. But I had kept enough for myself, for my treatment, for my comfort in whatever time I had left. And I had kept one other secret, the trust for abandoned cancer patients. It had a special provision. If Melissa ever reconnected with me of her own accord, truly reconnected not for money, but out of genuine remorse, she would receive a modest inheritance, enough to clear her debts and start fresh. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was dying. Again, just as they returned. But this time, I had the power to choose forgiveness or bitterness, to leave this world with a clenched fist or an open hand. Tomorrow at Riverside Cafe, I would decide which it would be, sometimes the greatest. Inheritance isn't what we leave behind, but what we choose to carry with us until the very end. The end.